Hey, what is going on? It is your girl, Coach Ham, with another rendition of not even coaching in the car. So we're just pretty much going to start this over because I'm tripping. This is Coach Ham Chronicles. This is the show that spills all types of leadership tea for your everyday 9 to 5. This is stuff that they're not going to tell you on your regular day. I got two of the dopest mental health professionals that are south of that Mason-Dixon line. They'll be coming on in a second. We'll be talking about canceling culture and the mental health side of things. What does that look like if you're one being canceled and if you're also the cancelee? So give me a second. Let me bring these two on and we can get started. Hey, y'all.
Hello.
What is going on? So before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts, I really want everyone to know exactly who are y'all? What are y'all about? Why are y'all so freaking dope? And how did we kind of get here today?
All right.
You gonna go first, huh?
Ladies first. Southern hospitality. Go ahead.
Hi, Tristan Marsh of Marsh Mental Health Management. I'm your big sister, so you already know. But for those who don't know, went to Bennett College, majored in psychology, master's in social work, get my PhD in advanced study in human behavior. I've had my own practice for almost 5 years now.
Okay.
I know. Snap. Marsh Mental Health Management is my own practice, and I'm pretty much a counselor for the culture. I do this for the culture so us Black people can get ahead and we can resolve some of the generational issues we've been faced with as to progress moving forward. That's it. That's all.
Okay. I mean, quick, fast, in a hurry. All right, Mr. Hart.
Right. I mean, that's a lot to follow, man. Just a regular guy here. I am Hans Louador. I am a proud Haitian American born in the great first free Black nation of Haiti. Shout out to all my Zoes, sac passe. There you go. So as far as my schooling goes, I had the pleasure of going to Georgia State University to get my bachelor's in psychology, then went down to Valdosta State University to get my master's in marriage and family therapy. I did therapy in the field where I met the great Tristan for a while. Started my own business as well called Housey and Living. We do therapy and coaching, but I'm actually transitioning that to my great, beautiful, awesome wife. So she's going to be heading that part, and I'll be focusing more on my voice. So I do have my own podcast, Hans Speaks. So shout out to that. And I'm just trying to make a dent in the podcasting world and the narrating and potentially voiceover world. So listen to my voice, get used to it. You might be hearing more of it. So that's me.
Y'all ladies, stop calling me. That's my Hans, okay? Because I'm so sick of like, Hans. I'm like, okay, what about me?
Well, it's all right. So my brothers, of course, I got a whole bunch of brothers. Yes, you know, the Mrs. Marsh of all things, just a miss. There's no MRS, so she's still available, y'all. So Go ahead, hit her up, slide into that DM, but you better come correct because this is my big sister. So just know what that means. Be prepared for the shutdown. All right, so before we kind of kick it off with these questions, y'all remember New Jack City? That was the first time I think I've ever heard that reference of being canceled. And I'm talking about for the, younger millennials. Y'all probably have no idea what New Jack City is, but this is like this urban 1990s, like hip hop movie straight in New York. But when we start talking about canceling culture, we're talking about this is that freedom of expression, being able to say what you want to say, whether you're in the workplace, whether you're in the private, or even on social media. And people kind of got some issues with it, right? So what normally happens, they start shutting things down, whether it's a social boycott, an actual boycott. It can come anywhere from present views, challenges, and then even from that corporate structure, we're going to kind of get into the sauce of what that actually looks like. So how do you start canceling corporate culture if it doesn't resonate with you, especially if you're one of those marginalized people? We're talking about those people of any type of African diaspora. So it's not just us Blacks. We're talking about the browns, the yellows, anybody. So we're talking about getting access to the seat. And for us to be here in corporate America, a lot of times we end up getting canceled before we even get in the door, let alone get a folding chair out, thanks to good old Shirley. So in order to be canceled, that means having a group decide that we're not going to support this person, place, or thing based off of a perceived or actual transgression. And I mean, that could be so narrow that it could be anything. So anywhere from canceling half of these shows to politicians, but now we're looking at the workforce. People start canceling CEOs. So what does that mean for us as a minority? So as we start getting into it, I mean, let's kind of go with the front. So either Tris or Hans, y'all go ahead. So what does it look like for either one of you guys to start talking about either being called out or canceled out? And what does that mean to y'all for a mental health side of things?
I think for me, we have to first understand the underlying intentions behind both. Regardless if you're calling out or canceling, what are the underlying intentions of what we're trying to do, right? And once it becomes retaliation, it is no longer effective. Mm-hmm. And that's honestly my opinion. I'm all about, like if something is not conducive to the health and well-being of a certain demographic, absolutely cancel it. But it gets to a point where you have to be more strategic and not get wrapped into retaliating, because then you become exactly what you don't want to be. Like you become the person you're trying to cancel.
Mm.
True. I feel that. And I appreciate you giving us the definition before, because that's what I was going to go into as well. Because oftentimes I think we kind of generalize a lot of things that are happening in our society and lump it into perceived being canceled. So, for example, somebody like R. Kelly or Bill Cosby or anything like that, to me, that's not being canceled. That's being held accountable. So as somebody where at my job, I am placed in a position of monitoring the environment of the workplace and making sure employees are treated fairly and that they're working efficiently, I have to kind of be mindful as that as well. So like, are we really canceling or are we holding people accountable? And I think it's important for us to really make those distinctions in this, pantheon of social media slashing, societal norms. So for me, it's important that, like Tristan said, we understand the underlying motives behind the said canceling. And then does that really align with our values moving forward? I think that's the next step after, of course, deciding whether it's accountability or you just being canceled. So.
And then also going a little deeper, understanding that we wouldn't have to cancel certain cultures if we change the systematic structure of that dynamic, right? Like, think about it like this. Like, we just had a Senate runoff here in Georgia. We should not have the first African-American senator and the first Jewish senator here in 2021 and 2020. Like, why is that even happening? Why are we still having firsts?
Yeah.
As we're going into the 2020s, you know what I'm saying? So The fact that shows that the system is not conducive to the times and the people, and we wouldn't have to cancel if we restructured. And that goes even to the police force. We wouldn't have to cancel if we restructured.
Right. So that's a whole nother episode, right?
Yes.
Talking about whether we're going to either shut this whole system down, reform it, that's a whole nother thing. But we start looking about canceling culture and what the definition was. And I had to Google, 5-page deep Google, figuring out what exactly that meant. It's talking about being able to demand social change, which then forces us to address all these inequalities. So, as Hans said, okay, R. Kelly, we canceled him, but we also did hold him accountable. Bill held accountable. I mean, he did just get out, so I'm not really sure how much of that accountability was there.
Yeah, right.
That's a whole nother thing. But then we're talking about calling out culture. That's also starting to call attention to the wrongdoing. It's giving people a chance to learn. It's also saying, hey, we recognize that you did something wrong, but we also want to give you another chance to make it right. So whether you having to then admit to your own transgressions, have to do some type of pivot, recirculation, change mentality, whatever it is, that's what it starts looking like for the individual who's being canceled, but then also for the canceller to realize all right, just like Tristan said, here's the heart of the matter. What exactly are we trying to prove when we're doing this type of action? And what does that really mean for everyone else around you who's also watching? Because at the end of the day, your life is always going to be on some type of magnifying glass, wherever who's watching it. But this is what we're looking like now. So I just want to get y'all, perspective on calling out, canceling out, holding accountable. Do you believe that these three things are kind of symbiotic? Are they very much different in a mental health perspective? And I know we don't necessarily use these terms, but for the therapist here, what does that really look like just on a mentality shift if you were to be called out or canceled?
I think again it goes into the intent, right? So I remember when Kevin Hart was supposed to host the Golden Globes or the Grammys or something like that, and then the LGBT community came out and pretty much was saying like no, like he tweeted something like 10 years ago, and it's just like, so how are you teaching him anything if you're pulling information from years ago? And I'm not saying people shouldn't be accountable, but at the end of the day, it's a time frame for teachable moments.
Yeah.
Like to really be able to teach and learn something, you have to be within a certain time frame of that. At the end of the day, if not, then that's just retaliation. So how are we teaching, and who is the teacher? Because canceling one person doesn't cancel the entire culture, or canceling or trying to teach one person. Okay, but who's teaching them, and how are we teaching them? And how does this affect the victims that they had prior to?
I mean, you got to think of it. So one big thing is you're talking about community now. So what ends up happening is you got a canceled or cancelee. They got a community now is empowered because they feel as though that we're able to now point a finger saying, we're holding you accountable. We're no longer going to tolerate your actions, your words, you know, whatever it is or position that you're in. We're together as a community saying enough is enough. But also, on the other hand, it's starting to make people think twice about behaving inappropriately, being very cautious of saying, all right, well, before I start posting and tweeting and doing all this other stuff, I'm gonna have to really think twice, especially now. And this is the social media day and era that you can be canceled for the lightest things. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is.
I mean,
it is. And like I said, it becomes retaliation at a certain sense. And then think about like this. Think about all the Black Lives Matters and the marches and things we've done, but Black people are still being killed.
Yeah.
So, and officers are going on leave of absence. Like, I think we might just have one win with the George Floyd, but at the end of the day, it's like, like, are we really canceling the culture, or are they just trying to give us something to shut us up?
Right. And that was a big thing for a lot of people in Minnesota. They were like, yeah, this is a small win. A big win would have been everybody on trial, all 4 police officers. They all would have got the same time. So regardless of you having your knee on this man's neck, the ones who were standing up, back turned, not looking, everybody should have the same amount of time. Y'all all were implicated. All y'all are accessories to the murder, regardless. But once again, that's a whole other episode. All right, but now we're talking about this negative side of the house, right? The mental side, which then becomes you're isolated, you know, you're ostracized, you're lonely, which then starts to increase anxiety, depression, and then suicide rates. So let's talk about those who are in the Black community. That if you get canceled, them suicide rates are sky high. And knowing that we are a body of people that, one, doesn't like to deal with depression. We don't like to talk about anxiety. Hell, we don't even like going to therapists. And the fact that we got 2 Black therapists right now today talking about this is a whole different story from what we used to have in the 90s, let alone the 80s. So when we start looking at just the suicide rates of what could potentially happen if you were to get canceled, I mean, it's crazy, right? But I mean, from y'all perspective, what do y'all usually see for the clients that, you know, do or don't necessarily deal with the anxiety and the depression from just social media as a whole?
Well, I think there's a lot of complexities that kind of go into that. So even initially when you were talking about the difference between calling out and canceling, and as we were getting into that discussion, what stuck out to me was also the environment that it's happening in, right? So the environment that these things are occurring in are in the social media environment where no one controls that. No one polices social media. Whereas if you were in a corporate setting or even in a familial setting, that's a more controlled environment, you know, something to where it is controlled, and there is a distinction between the calling out and the canceling. And there's even timelines put on how long this is going to happen, especially if you're in the corporate world, right? But when you're talking to clients and you're starting to see clients who are vastly invested into this world of social media and it has become a part of their life, you really have to, as a therapist, your goal is to help them to find that balance, right? Because at the end of the day, what is perceived and seen on social media is not often what is the reality of the situation. Now, of course, because social media is not something that's concrete, does not mean it doesn't affect you real, right? So there is some reality to it. But first, you have to see what balance does your client have in regards to social media and how it interacts into their life, right? So then it gives you a sense of how much weight does this canceling take for them. Does that make sense? So where does it sit? Where are they categorizing it? Where are they putting their interactions in their life set right now? So then you can go and start to help them articulate their relationship with that incident that happened, whether it be a calling out or a canceling, and how to properly maneuver moving forward. But all those things really kind of have to happen first before you can even start to go in to the discussion of, the quote unquote cliche, how does that make you feel kind of a situation.
Right. And I think when it comes to social media, you see the calling out culture more frequently with celebrities and teenagers. Like when you talk about teenagers, that like social media is their world. You know what I'm saying? So it's like one thing and they shut down their whole page because, and when you shut down, like you see the changes, you see how it makes them feel. Those likes and comments are really like serious to them. And understanding and teaching them how to differentiate is hard because we didn't grow up. I think we had like Black Planet or something like that, and it wasn't even on our cell phones. You know what I'm saying? So it's different when your world is literally in the palm of your hand, and that's honestly how you make your friends and how you connect and how you run your business through this device in your hand. Where we grow up, where we were networking, we were going outside and play, we were doing like we go and meet up with our friends, and we put our phones down. So it is drastically different when you get canceled and you're called out when you're a teenager, as opposed, or even a celebrity, because then your money is connected to that.
Right.
As opposed to me, you call me out all day and I just log off and go watch TV or something.
Right.
But still, it is stressful because, as you said, like we all have businesses, right?
Right.
And we all have strong personalities. But it gets to a point where you kind of like, now you taking like 20, 30 minutes to write a post, where before you had your business, it'll take you 5 minutes to write that post because now you're picking your words differently. You're choosing it differently because even if you misspell something, guess what? Somebody calling you out.
Right.
So it gets so nitpicky where this one device, this one tool that's supposed to be an asset can be anxiety ridden. Like it can increase your anxiety if you're really codependent on those people that are following you.
I mean, both of y'all made some phenomenal points, especially when you start talking about outside of just the celebrity and the team, then you got us in the middle, right? So those who are using our businesses on social media, for some people, that is their bread and butter. That is it. So outside of having to take 4 or 5 hours to create 5 or 10 posts for the day, then you got the rest of them who are looking at their insights on their Instagram page. What does your engagement look like? Then you get all super depressed when you got lost 5 followers on a Sunday night. It's like, okay, at what point is there going to be a balance? Hans spoke about that earlier. Like there has to be balance. So whether you are having a business, and we do know that the old school days of just handing out business cards and going to network events are, ways before us now, but trying to find different things to be able to say, look, we're going to have to find a way to either go and move with the times or pivot and figure out a way that we are able to connect. So we're not always heavily relying on 4 or 5 different platforms that either name or shame us. And I know before we kind of get into the last 2 questions, I know we'll take a quick break. We do have a paid sponsor that wants to boost up their stuff. So give us a second. We'll be right back. All right, and we back real quick, fast and hurry. So, all right, so we are starting to move along, and Hans I think Tristan actually made a really good point. We're talking about environment now. So the environment that we're currently living in, this is the post-COVID, the soon Delta variant, which I think is really a rude variant to have a name for, but we'll let it have. A Sigma variant would be nice, but anyway.
Wow. So shots fired.
Just a couple. My bad. We do love all of them. Anyway, so there can also be those benefits if you are to be canceled. I mean, I'm an only child by trade, so I'm good if I was ever be canceled. Leave me the hell alone. I'm going about my business. But there has to be some type of highlight. There's always a yin to a yang. So on this side of the yin, I mean, what is y'all perspective of if you were to be actually canceled What are those benefits looking like?
Well, so the world and the nature that we live in, there's always people who go against the grain just to go against the grain. Yep. And now even the term cancel culture is becoming cliche, and it's getting out there, right? It's huge. Yeah. It's huge. So there are people who are just going against the grain just to go against the grain because they want to stop the momentum of this. So example that comes to mind, honestly, for me is Tory Lanez, right? So the whole thing that happened with him and Meg Thee Stallion and everything like that, there are people who are legit on his side just because they want to go counterintuitive to the cancel culture. And to me, that can be a positive if you're looking for a new demographic to get into as an artist, if you're, looking to get your things out there. And if you look at the statistics, when artists are being canceled, streams go up, sales go up. True. So there are some positives to being canceled, especially I feel like if you're higher up, there are more positives, more likelihood of you getting some positive off of a cancel culture versus those who are in between or lesser in the world of social media. Because we're really seeing that there is coming back from cancel culture. There are some people who are able to come back and who are able to thrive. But I really think it's kind of where you land on that hierarchy, that social classism of cancel culture.
I agree, but then I'm going to add another component. I think your bounce back from cancel culture is only when it's related to Black women. Like if you do something against a Black woman, you're more likely to come back as opposed to a white woman, a LGBTQ community, or Jewish community. If it's a Black woman, you bounce back, you have, because Black women are at the bottom of the totem pole. Like even you see with the whole thing that T.I.'s going through with, the sexual allegations and everything else. Like he went and did a whole record for that. You see where they're going, Chris Brown had the whole thing with Rihanna.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think when it's against a Black woman, then you're more likely to have that bounce back, because for some reason or another, the world hates Black women, but y'all love our culture, y'all love our food, y'all love the way we look, y'all love everything about us but us. And I think when you are canceled because you had a discretion against a Black woman, you're more likely to bounce back. Look at, again, R. Kelly. All his victims were Black.
Yeah.
So understanding that dynamic goes a long way. You know what I'm saying? But I do agree that there are some good and bad things when it comes to that cancelee. And the first thing when you first posed the question, my first thing was Dave Chappelle. No, Dave Chappelle didn't get canceled, but he chose to remove himself.
Yeah.
And he knew his worth and understood his worth, that like, I can leave because I'm so ill and I don't have to deal with what y'all giving me. Mm-hmm. So don't understand that culture, yes, we can cancel a person, but a person can also cancel us.
Yeah.
It's not a one-way street.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner we realize that, the sooner we can understand the whole dynamic that we have to learn from each other, and we are the culture and the culture is us. But we feel like we can bully people sometimes into doing what we want them to do, and that's not necessarily the case. Mm. So yeah, if I get canceled, I don't know what I would get canceled. Well, I do, because I got a smart mouth. I know that. But I'm not disrespectful. I'm not rude. But on the other hand, you're not going to come at me crazy. Even with clients. I had clients many times like, I get a new therapist. Bye-bye. You ain't getting your refund, but bye-bye. Like,
you signed a contract.
There you go. And I know I'm not for everybody. Everyone's not for me. But understand that I can also choose to not work with you, just like you can choose to not work with me.
Mm. Yeah. And I think one thing that we need to realize too, so just speaking from the client perspective, right? So if you're in therapy, you're in session with somebody, one thing that social media is an amalgamation or magnification of everyday life. Yeah. So take every lessons, every concepts that occur in everyday life and just magnify them by 100. That's what social media is, because essentially it's giving you more access and connectivity to more people. So this slip down the stairs that Meek Mill had, that just would have been a normal slip down the stairs, is now seen by millions of people.
In 5 minutes. In 5 minutes.
Exactly. Right. So he's clowned to the nth degree. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
For a trip down the stairs. So that's one thing when I'm talking to clients or potential clients in regards to that, or even people at the workplace, understand that it's not social media is technically new, but it's not new under the sun. It's really just a magnification of everything that we deal with in everyday life. So just like you say, Tristan, they're not everybody's for you. That's the same thing. That's the same thing that we go through every day. So as people who are business professionals, who are entrepreneurs, we understand that our business does not cater to everybody. So there are going to be people who are going to be critical of us, who are just going to straight out hate us, right? And we have to learn how to flip that switch, that same switch that we do in quote unquote real life when somebody's hating. You're like, well, you don't pay my bills, so it's good. We need to flip that same switch when it's 20,000 followers who are saying the same thing. Well, they still don't pay my bills, so we're good. You get what I'm saying? It's really an amalgamation, and the sooner we kind of start to understand that and learn to play that game, the better off we'll be.
Absolutely. And I think what you said is highly imperative. And that takes a level of security and a level of resiliency. And we have to be honest about where we are in those two dynamics. Like, are you really secure with who you are? Because you can't say you're secure with who you are, but then you need those same people to feed your ego.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so true. And you're right. It's the word you used before is like if you have that codependency. So that's really what it is. And I oftentimes have to put it in perspective is, okay, your number of followers, how many of them do you really know?
Like 5.
You get what I'm saying? Like, how many of them do you really know? Because in real life, right, when you're in that dark place, right, when you're in that moment of just uncertainty and you don't know what's going on and you're just feeling weird, right? Like, what does your circle really look like? Yeah. Is it those thousands of followers right there? Or is it those 1 or 2 people who are calling in, checking on you, making sure you're okay? Yeah. You get what I'm saying? So it's about, where are you placing your value and, where are you looking to for the support? And like Tristan said, sometimes you really just know a couple of them. You really do. So why not base it off those couples that you really know rather than the vast that you don't know and don't know anything about you? Right.
My favorite thing is if you ain't got my phone number, you can't have a problem with me. Because you don't even know me well enough to have a problem with me.
But that also goes back to realizing that for social media, everything also outside of, yes, it's magnified by 100, but it's also with rose-colored glasses. People aren't really showing you the trueness or the realness of what your life looks like behind those filters. Because vacation looks great and you on the beach, toes out, cool, everybody getting drinks, popping bottles, great. But I have yet to see someone's page where they show them, I'm depressed and I've been in this bed for 4 days. I got my head I got my head in this bonnet. I'm not going to work. I'm going to call out Slick again for the 6th day. I can't really feel anything and I don't know why, and I can't tell anybody. I mean, the day I see somebody's page, I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to like this. Because it's not liking for the fact that you're depressed or you have anxiety, but I like the fact that you are so vulnerable. You are so transparent about this is the current state that you're honestly being honest about everything that's going on in your world. You're really actually showing people, here's the good side of it, and then here's the bad side. But
the issue becomes the issue becomes we live in a world where that is called attention seeking.
Yes.
Oh, you just want attention. You just want attention. It's like, yes, because I'm depressed. Like, please help me, Lord. Like,
right.
So but we as people, we only want to see the good and the bubbly and the things that and then the moment you get into a whole nother feeling that makes us uncomfortable, then we unfollow. We don't want nothing to do with that because you made us uncomfortable. And guess what? Sometimes you need to be uncomfortable. Because if you were uncomfortable in the beginning, this wouldn't have magnified to a point where a culture needs to be canceled because you would have seen the signs in the beginning.
Right. It's even worse when you start seeing those suicide rates and then you're at somebody's funeral like, well, I knew they were off. They seemed off. Well, then why didn't you say anything?
Right.
All of a sudden, because you were following them and then the person just goes black for a week, you don't think that's normal? You don't want to just hit them up, ping them, nothing? Okay, so then it really goes back to saying, all right, this starts creating that environment. And if it doesn't necessarily allow you to connect or even correct certain behavior, how are people going to learn from these mistakes? And then even after these mistakes are happening on and on without feeling contrite, or even being a part of what makes us human, how do we grow? How are we developing? And then we're looking from this business perspective to eat. And Tristan made a good point. Black women being canceled, even in the C-suite world. You know, less than 2% of minorities, not even women, are ever into a C-suite position. So your CFOs, CEOs, CHOs, 2%. That's it. And I'm talking about this is since like 98. So even for the fact that Coca-Cola had like a new CFO and they're Black, it's like, great. Thanks, Atlanta. Appreciate it. But for everything else, it's starting to look at, you know, why are we being the first group to be canceled? But yet y'all giving these Karens, Beckys, Bobs, and Rogers time after time a slap on the wrist, and everybody's fine.
But here's the reason that's happening though, is because they understand what Tristan just said. Social media is a tool. If you use it as a tool, then you're not dependent upon it as much. They understand at the end of the day, this is a vehicle that can be used to truly, like you said, if I wanted to connect to the masses and either expose, sell, advertise, whatever I need to do that. Now, of course, we as Black people, we've turned it into something else, which is beautiful too, right? We've turned it into a form of expression. We've done so many great things with it, which is great within its right. But yet that within itself is not nourishment. Does that make sense? That's not nourishment. That is not encompassing of all the social interactions that we need to live healthy mental life. So at the end of the day, the reason the Beckys, the Karens, the Jims, the Sylvesters, or whatever, they don't get truly canceled is because of two things. Number one, the system that we referenced before that's built for them and not for us. And also they understand the usefulness in using social media as a tool. They understand that. And once you view something as a tool, you no longer have that attachment and that dependency upon it because it is a tool that you're wielding.
That's it. And then you control how it flows. You control what your audience sees. You get the ability to manipulate the content. And it's the same thing like you see with companies all the time. And it gets to a point where it's like, it's sad. But like I said, Black women have it so hard because it's like if you don't look a certain way, talk a certain way, walk a certain way, have a certain number of degrees, blah, blah, blah. Then it's like, if you're not this, then you're ghetto. Right. If you're not that, then you're loud and Black. And it's just like, one, I'm ghetto, loud, and Black, and I'm still professional. Honey, don't try to pigeonhole me. I'm all of it. And it gets sad.
Yeah. But not only that, then you have to look on it from the, I would say, Caucasianery side of the house that you now feel like because we're in this culture, you have to have a person of color on your CEO team or your leadership team. And it's because, let's be honest, you're checking a box. It's not because you want diversity of thought. It's not but because you know that this person has a different perspective because how they've experienced life, how they understood and how they see things from different perspective. But they're realizing that, okay, in order for us to start becoming more expansive in our business, we're starting to target more people of a certain group or those marginalized communities that we honestly on a good day wouldn't even pay them any mind. We gonna have to get Shauna, Shaquita, and all of them. But you're not gonna try and do that because you know you want that lily white on that beige long hallway to look very symbiotic. I think the most amazing picture was when Kamala ended up coming out and they had that one post and it was like all white dudes and the one Black chick. And I mean, it had Pence, of course, with the fly. But I mean, that is depiction of most corporate cultures. They're not really trying to have that. They know they need it, just like they need to have all these empowering posters like cats hanging on saying, we're here for resilience. No, resilience is when you're able to say, look, I'm going to start bringing X, Y, and Z to the table because I want to know how can I impact this community? We haven't been doing it before. I want to be able to do it now. So you tell me, Hans, you tell me, Tristan, I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. How can we start breaking through so we can start getting more people to understand what we do? This is our culture. This is our values, and it aligns with our systems.
In my opinion, to be able to do that, we got to stop conforming. Like we can't want them to accept us for who we are, but then we're so quick to code switch and conform to make them comfortable, right? Like we do all these things to get the job, but then we be mad because they don't accept us for who they are. Who the hell are you? Like,
yeah.
Because you're changing to be more accepted, but then you mad that you got to change, but then you keep doing it. So which one is it? Like, how does that work? And understanding that it's a time and a place. If you're not appreciated, then why are you there? And I understand we all need a check, right?
Right.
But we all don't have to buy them shirts from Walmart in February when they finally want to recognize Black History Month. Right. 1 month out the year. We ain't got to buy them shirts.
Yeah.
But we do it, right? So I'm just saying, like, but it's so many other people of our color that we can't support other than these Black, these massive corporations that only want to celebrate us once a month, but we keep going back and giving them our money.
Or better yet, the month of June. I know for DC up here, this whole city was painted like Rainbow Coalition. I would have thought it was literally My Little Ponies, just glitter everywhere, rainbows everywhere, and it's like great. However, my question would have been for all these businesses that are flying flags, painting the entire brick and mortar companies with straight up rainbows, how many of your actual staff is LGBTQ? And have you actually hired them? And if you haven't, who are you faking and fronting for?
But for the money, like I said, it's like, and if they do hire us, guess where they putting us? In the marketing department.
Or back in storage.
There you go. We not CEOs and CFOs and stuff like that. And that's the sad part. But again, I think it really does start with us. We can't keep conforming and changing our hair, changing how we talk, changing our dress and shortening our nails and all this other stuff to go get a job, but then be mad when they don't accept us for who we are.
Right. Or better yet, having to make that hardcore decision most mornings if you are in the corporation or just corporate world to figure out, do I straighten my hair or do I wear my fro? Do I take these twist outs, or am I okay enough to be able to then just rock my braids without having somebody come up and say, oh, is that new hair? I've got that twice.
Don't touch my hair.
Oh yeah, I've had people almost try to grab me like I was the cutest little puff. Yeah, they've gotten real quick.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like we have to show up in our true form if we genuinely want to make change, and we can't keep trying to conform for other people's and other cultures' comfort, because guess what? Those same cultures are biting our style and marketing and making millions out. Look at the Kardashians. Look at any fashion show. Like they bite our style all day long, make money in the same style that we try to suppress.
Yep. What's your thoughts?
How, Sway?
No, I mean, these are all things that I've just been thinking, and it's so true, because at the end of the day, you can't have both sides. Like you really can't. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So right. So you get in their system, and through that system comes a sense of having to assimilate, and then you lose sense of self, right, to get there. So what I would say to combat that is just rely on your worth. And I get it, hustle, do what you gotta do to get there. But once you're there, be your true self. So one thing that Tristan was mentioning, even something as simple hairstyle. So yeah, I'm technically in the corporate setting, but these braids, you're gonna get these braids, because at the end of the day, if I don't feel like getting up and doing my natural hair every day, I can do that. As long as it doesn't affect my work, I can still run your business. I can do what I need to do. It's gonna happen. And us honestly also being more supportive of that freedom of expression, and not making it a kind of show and pony kind of thing. Does that make sense? Because what happens with social media is things start to get tumbling, and it starts to get out of control, and people start to exacerbate everything. Yes, be yourself, but there's still kind of a standard as well too, right? And that standard is professionalism. So you can still be yourself and be professional, like Tristan was saying, right? So I can still identify with certain demographics in certain areas and all of that, but still do my job efficiently, still excel, and still reach my demographic. So it's like you do have to have that balance, and just be cautious of, trying not to become that token. Because one thing I know is true, diversity does not equal inclusion.
Yes.
So, and you have to understand that, like, diversity does not equal inclusion. So when you're looking at these potential places that you want to work, and you see that familiar face in that, marketing, like Tristan said, or that tagline, that could just be a token, right? That could just be something to draw you in, and doesn't necessarily speak to the workplace and the environment. So you really have to be cautious of vetting. Like, just like they vet you, you got to vet them too.
Right.
You got to vet them too. Like Beyonce said, right? Why she went to Adidas, because when she was sitting in the room with Nike, she ain't see faces like her.
Right.
You know? So be true to yourself. Be careful that it doesn't become a show and pony, right? And it becomes more about you than the work, because I think that's where it is. The proof is in the pudding. If you're really putting out great work, it's going to show. And you have to remember that let your work speak for itself, and don't be a token. You know, don't let them use you as a trophy and as a tool. I think that's what you have to do once you get into those spaces, because what that does is it starts to let them know, like, okay, these people of color actually have great work, so I can take a risk, right? I can take a risk on other people rather than, oh, look at him getting all the attention and doing all of this, and then they're just going to use you for that. You're going to be that pony. That's what you're going to do. You're going to be the arm candy that they bring to those pitch meetings, but you're not in the room where the pitches actually happen. That's just how it really is. It's unfortunate, but that's the game we have to play.
That's actually the perfect segue to start slowing down and recapping. So, we want to thank Hans and Tristan, of course, for just blessing the stage, having this really comfortable conversation. So, a couple of things I want to be able to recap. Spend more time outside in the real world. Realize that you don't always have to be the token, and particularly understanding what your calling is can also help you shift your perspective and remind you that even if it doesn't feel like it's the whole world is out to get you, you are still you at the end of the day. Social media cannot be your end all be all, especially when there is so much more out for all of us to be able to connect, reform, and also change. So once again, for Hans and Tristan, if y'all want to leave them with one or two things, please let them know where can they find you. If they need you for your services, please.
Well, I'm at marshmentalhealth.com and on Instagram and Facebook, Marsh Mental Health. Pretty simple. Like, I try to keep it consistent, And my work number is 770-371-8182. I just memorized that.
Look at you. You out here. You are out here.
I'm just saying, I want to be semi-professional.
Being out here, giving out personal numbers. Okay.
Yes.
Right. As for me, guys, of course, follow the Hans and Tristan podcast on IG. We have a YouTube page as well. It's called the same thing, Hans and Tristan podcast. Follow your boy personally, man. Hans Speaks. I am on IG as Hans Speaks. I'm also on Twitter as Hans_Speaks. I have my own podcast as well called Hans Speaks. So please check me out. I bring a lot to the table. Just support your boy, man. Support your boy.
All right. Well, for those, if y'all looking for more information on Coach Ham Chronicles, you can follow us on actually on YouTube, but also on paramintelligence.com. If you are looking to get an executive coach in order to get your life right, you can hit us up. But until then, talk to you later. Peace.